WWE Clash in Paris 2025 felt like a show that was going to be pretty predictable in terms of the actual outcome of the matches. They all seemed like we had a pretty good idea of who was going to win each of the 6 matches that were announced for this card on Sunday, and, well, it's kind of how it played out. There weren't really any huge surprises in terms of the winners, but WWE got us. They had something up their sleeve for a big surprise at the end of the main event, which of course was the Fatal 4-Way match for the World Heavyweight Championship. Seth Rollins defending against CM Punk, LA Knight, and Jey Uso. And throughout really the entire show, the whole thought had become Seth Rollins is about to introduce a new member of the Vision, isn't he? Because of the things that Seth Rollins said backstage in the interview with Jackie Redmond, saying that he was already 2 steps ahead, and if he couldn't win the title by himself, then maybe he shouldn't be champion. These are things that heels say, right? Knowing that they have something planned, something that's going to be a bit of a surprise for everyone else. Well, we knew the whole scenario was built around the idea that Paul Heyman wasn't going to be there because Roman Reigns had already choked him out after the opening match, which saw Reigns defeat Bronson Reed. But of course, that pissed off Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. They completely destroyed Roman Reigns, and what I think absolutely set up the next match in the series between Reigns and the Vision, because it is going to be Roman Reigns versus Braun Breaker. Just as we talked about going in, could this be the thing where they play it up as Reigns has to run the gauntlet of the Vision to finally get to Seth Rollins? I think this was absolutely a step in that direction when you had Breaker come out and deliver the spears the way he did to Reigns, and clearly they are sending Reigns on his way for the next couple months until probably he returns for the Survivor Series build up to War Games and all that. But we'll talk about that once we get there. For now, despite one clear, I think, tease that we are going to eventually get to Reigns versus Breaker and then Reigns versus Rollins after that, it was how they did things in the main event that absolutely set up perhaps one of the most intriguing things that we probably are going to be talking about heading into next month's PLE, which we know is now Wrestlepalooza, the first one that's going to take place on this ESPN service. Goodbye, Peacock. This was it. Quite a farewell, I would say, with what was, in my opinion, a pretty good show at Clash in Paris. But they are setting up this ESPN inaugural show there to be one of the biggest things I think WWE has ever done. And remember, we've said that a lot the past couple years. We said that about the Netflix launch earlier this year. We said this is going to be one of the biggest things they've ever done, and they're going to market it that way. They're going to promote it that way. The same holds true for this ESPN launch on September the 20th when they head to Indianapolis for Wrestlepalooza. And we know right now the rumored match to headline that show is probably going to be John Cena versus Brock Lesnar. They didn't do anything on this show to move us in that direction, which I was a little bit surprised by, but you would have to think that's coming as soon as probably Friday on SmackDown. I don't know if Cena's advertised for Raw on Monday. If he is, then that could be a possibility, but it's also a holiday in the States, and sometimes you don't necessarily get the amount of viewers that you like for that show, so it's got to be Cena versus Lesnar set up this week, and we should be off and running for that being the main event for the first ever ESPN show. Also likely for that show seems to be Cody Rhodes defending the WWE title against Drew McIntyre. And so those are 2 pretty good headline matches, right? Those 2, pairings. You got a lot of history between both of those. Both of those duos in those matches. But there's another match now coming out of this main event that I think is perhaps clear as day. And no, it's not CM Punk versus Seth Rollins. You guys know what I'm talking about. Because by WWE doing the thing that, quite frankly, was right there in front of us, it made all the sense in the world that when Rollins did not have Braun Breaker, did not have Bronson Reed, did not have Paul Heyman, Seth Rollins didn't turn to a new member that perhaps he had yet to kind of completely had that trust in just yet. No, he turned to his wife because that was the next most obvious choice, was for him to simply ask his wife for help. But it wasn't just the fact that Becky helped Seth Rollins win the match to retain the title. It was what we had sprinkled in to get to that point. Seth Rollins during the match is basically taunting all three of his opponents, right? He's yelling at LA Knight. He's yelling at Jey Uso, had different things to say to both of them. I think he told LA Knight he was yesterday's news. I don't remember exactly what he said to Jey, but he was making it clear that every single person that he was interacting with, they were catching it on the microphone, that they wanted to make sure that in the audio we heard that Seth Rollins was running these other two guys down, right? And then he got to the finish with Punk. And that's when Rollins starts telling Punk, you know what? I don't want you to ever have another match in WWE again. I don't want you ever to touch that championship ever again. But then he dropped the line in there. As soon as he said those two things, what did Seth Rollins say? He said, I hate your family. He said that to CM Punk. And when he said that line, my ears kind of perked up a little bit. I'm like, that's kind of an interesting line to be saying, that you hate Punk's family. Because we know whose Punk family consists of, right? It consists of Larry the dog, and it also consists of AJ Lee. And if that was something that they were going to drop in there, that Seth Rollins hated Punk's entire family, and then Seth Rollins had a member of his own family, the current Women's Intercontinental Champion, Becky Lynch, come out to help him retain the title, and in the process, screw CM Punk yet again. WWE is dropping all the hints they could possibly drop as to what is coming next. Because for all these years, people have been wondering, when are we going to hear that theme song again? When are we going to see AJ Lee skip down the entrance ramp to the ring and make her long-awaited return? How many years in a row now have people just been begging for AJ Lee to be one of the surprise entrants in the Royal Rumble? When they did the whole thing with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre and the bracelet that had AJ's name on it and Larry's name on it, of course. People were wondering, was that going to be what prompted her return? It would have made sense during that feud, but you weren't going to do AJ Lee versus Drew McIntyre. That wasn't a match you had as an option. However, in this scenario, you absolutely have a match as an option for AJ Lee. But not just one, you got multiple matches, right? You got the potential singles match between AJ Lee and Becky Lynch. Who wouldn't want to see that? But what I think is about to happen is you've got another match that you could possibly sell on that Wrestlepalooza card of having CM Punk on one side, Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch on the other side, but Punk's got to have a partner, right? He's got to have a partner to be able to get back at Rollins and Becky, because this has become even more personal now. It's about family. It wasn't just a personal hatred and the rivalry between Seth Rollins and CM Punk like it was before. No. It's gotten personal now. We brought family into this. CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. If you're WWE and you're thinking of the possibilities of how we can make this show feel somewhat like a WrestleMania potentially for ESPN, you want to go all in on this show, where we will also bring up, there's another show going on that night, AEW All Out. If you are going with the thought here that you just want to put out the best possible card you can, the most intriguing elements you could possibly add, it is an absolute no-brainer that you do CM Punk and AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins. Now, you can say, well, this is a wild theory, right? Well, you guys are online. There has been already a report out there saying that, I think it was from Sean Ross Sapp, Fightful Select, saying that there have been an increased number of pitches in WWE creative meetings recently regarding AJ Lee. CM Punk, after the show, grabs the sign or points at the sign, I remember exactly what he did, that had AJ Lee on it. Jackie Redmond and Big E both started talking about AJ Lee on the WWE Clash in Paris post-show. They're not just bringing up her name for any reason, right? Because if you're Triple H and everybody else, and all of a sudden Jackie and Big E are out there name-dropping AJ Lee, and you know she's got no shot of coming back, there's no way you're going to allow that. You're going to be getting the earpiece saying, whoa, please stop fueling any potential rumors of AJ returning. No. They went with it. They kept talking about it, kept talking about the possibilities. And so, for that reason, I've got to think that this is something that could be brewing now. After all the different things over the years, the rumors, could it be this one? Could it be that one? This is going to be the time. They've never set something up like this to the point to where now, storyline-wise, it makes all the sense in the world. The previous ones were just basically hopes and dreams, right? Let's just hope they find a way to throw her into the mix. But it wasn't like they were outright teasing her as a possibility. But now, you've got these things that are set in motion. And again, you're doing this with basically 3 weeks to go before one of your biggest shows ever. It really, again, for the second time this year, is one of the biggest shows ever for WWE. Because this is, just like the Netflix thing was, this is a business sort of landmark moment for this company, and they are going to go all in on this. And that's why, obviously, they brought Brock Lesnar back to do the match with Cena. Cena, could possibly get the win. Lesnar could get the win. It doesn't really matter. You've got these two names on top of this particular show. Like we said, Cody and Drew McIntyre. There's plenty to work with there. But if this is one of your marquee matches on that show, the interest is going to absolutely skyrocket because it is a very big match. It has sort of mainstream type appeal just because of what Becky has become, right? In terms of what she is for the women's division. AJ Lee is someone who has worked in other very visible projects, right? And so I just think this is something that surprisingly was right there in front of us throughout that entire show when they set up the idea that Rollins was going to have no one in his corner. He simply turns to his wife for the assist that he needs to retain the title. And in the meantime, that sets up the family dynamic now between Seth Rollins and CM Punk. And we know, having AJ Lee part of CM Punk's family, this is the time. If they're going to do it, I can't think of a better possibility for AJ Lee to finally, after years and years and years, to make her return to WWE than to do it on this historic show and also do it with a story that simply is right there for the taking by adding her to the mix with CM Punk. Maybe it's a tag team match. Maybe they decide they want to bring her back for a one-on-one match. Now, that would be something if they want to go ahead and do AJ Lee versus Becky Lynch. But I think in some way, shape, or form, AJ Lee is going to be back in WWE very soon. And I would be surprised, just like I was on the show when Becky Lynch hit CM Punk in the balls. I'd be surprised if AJ Lee does not return at this point and do so in the very near future. You guys, let me know what you think. What did you think about all the teases WWE was dropping, both towards the end of that show, after the show? And I know Triple H may have said something too. I didn't catch the exact, comments that Triple H had, but you guys can remind me on that. I'll have to go back and watch them. But it is something where I think you're clearly looking at something pretty big here on the horizon for potentially that group there with Punk, Rollins, Becky, and maybe AJ Lee. Let me know what you think, guys. Always appreciate your feedback. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button as well. Let me know your predictions. Is AJ Lee finally about to return to WWE?